Hello, glad to see you on my channel. I really value it. And today I want to share with you a wonderful story. It's a dramatic story that will come as a total shock to everybody. It is a really amazing story. So enjoy watching it.
You need to get married, Cindy, my friend and colleague Sarah said with a sigh, shoveling mashed potatoes into a plastic bucket. But first, a torrid, heady affair. Lelka makes a good point, Selena remarked. At least the rest of your life will be normal. Well, what did you see with that monster? Bruises, covered with foundation cream, and the fact that you with Billy in your arms hid in the neighborhood. Of course, the dead are either good or nothing but the truth, finished Ariana, Cindy's classmate, in a deep voice. By the way, that's what the saying really sounds like. Cindy was organizing the leftover sausage, smoked fish, and chopped vegetables from her husband Lucy's 40th birthday memorial dinner into containers. Oh, girls, for God's sake, the widow grinned sadly. Barry's soul can hear everything till he's 40. And let it hear, said Selena as if she had said it. Let him hear everything. How much have you endured from him in your lifetime? And then, what if that monster is only happy for you? Oh, come on, Cindy said. What's Billy going to say? Daddy's dead, and Mommy's already got a new uncle in the house. Please, Sarah rolled her eyes. First of all, you haven't brought anyone home yet. Secondly, it's a step you have to take, and it's going to take time. A year from now, and no one will judge you. How old is your Billy now? 12, the widow replied with a sigh. Oh boy, let me guess. He spends his time either with his friends or on the computer, right? Well, yes, she smiled weakly. And then the girls will start, Ariana noted. And then before you know it, the guy's married. What about you? What about me? Cindy shrugged. I'll be babysitting grandchildren. It's all clear, summarized the classmate, and looking at her friends, waved her hands. She's incorrigible. She's going to follow Barry and not even know what it's like to live life to the fullest and be truly happy. Cindy, don't you want to live for yourself? I don't know, she admitted. I hadn't really thought about it. Well, maybe it's time to think about it. What's 32? Juicy, Selena said. Exactly. God, Cindy, if you want to cry for your husband, then cry and move on. I don't think he's worth it, though. He wouldn't appreciate it. Oh, guys, it's complicated. Cindy shook her head. I need to get back on track. Then I can think about myself. The friends looked at each other with a faint glance. Somehow they didn't believe that would be the case. So far they had heard only words. That was just the way this woman was. Cindy thought of others first, and only then of herself. She was also afraid of change. But deep down, somewhere in the bottom of her heart, Cindy knew her friends were right. And change had already come, so maybe. Selena said when all the food and drinks had been put away, and you lie down and rest, you're exhausted. Yes, I will, nodded Cindy. Thanks, girls. After she had seen her friends off, she lay down on the bed, but she didn't feel like sleeping. Cindy sank into her memories. Barry and Cindy had started dating when she was a freshman in medical school. There probably wasn't a student in the entire college who hadn't noticed the beautiful blue-eyed brunette with the chiseled figure. And classmate Anthony was in love with her. But one of the first college beauties made a choice outside the institution, and he, to put it mildly, puzzled everyone who knew her. Cindy's lover, the leader of the local Gopniks, worked as a handyman in some Sharashkana office one day. The hero of her novel wasn't handsome, and he wasn't fearful either. But with one look at Barry, it wasn't hard to realize that his intelligence was in trouble. The guy wore tracksuits, shaved his head, and despised perfume. A man should smell like a man, he told his subordinates. Having finished 9 grades with a squeak, Barry decided that was enough. He considered further education a waste of time and called all students slackers, squandering their parents' money. A real man should earn money, not sit behind a desk, Barry cut off. I finished school, I can read, I can write, I can count money. What else do you need? When Cindy timidly stammered about the fact that with education more chances to get a good job, the lover only condescendingly flicked the girl on the nose and said, Much you understand. All this reasoning slobbering and mama's boys. And a real tough guy will not waste time on some kind of study. Barry was contemptuous of such things as candy bouquet period, modest but nice gifts, some is kind not on business, but just because a man missed another, as he put it, callow tenderness. And I am not a heifer, he told his beloved. I am a concrete man, standing firmly on his feet. When Cindy realized that romance was out of the question, she wasn't upset. And really, what was the point of all this? After all, she had a real tough guy by her side, and everything else was nothing. However, it was not only in the disregard for education and lack of attention to the girl. Much scarier was another thing. From time to time, Barry raised his hand to Cindy, humiliated her in public, and told his friends that he was doing it for educational purposes. When the friends found out about it, they were horrified. Love is evil, of course, but still. Cindy, you're an interesting and educated girl, her friend and classmate Ariana reprimanded her. Well, what the hell do you want with that roughneck? And he has his hands all over you. With your smarts and looks, you could get a guy that everyone would be jealous of. It's Barry I want, Cindy said stubbornly. I love him. He's great. He just needs to be understood. And anyway, it's our relationship. What kind of relationship is that? Exclaimed her friend. If he lets himself raise his hand to you now, what will happen if you, God forbid, get married? Why, God forbid? The girl asked with a grin. We'll get married anyway, and everything will be fine. No, you're definitely zombified. Ariana summarized, and for the sake of convincing, she added, it's only going to get worse. The two friends had a big fight and didn't speak to each other until they graduated from high school. Then their paths parted for some time. Angelica, the girl's mother, also shook her head in bewilderment. Cindy, you're beautiful, she said, putting ointment on her daughter's black eye. Aren't there any decent guys in college? Probably there are, shrugged the girl in love. But I don't like anyone. Their ponytails and bob, yuck. And they're all kind of stiff or something. Excuse me, please. Basically, if I may, boring. What's wrong with that? Angelique wondered, thinking that Barry seems to have thoroughly brainwashed her. That's just the way people talk, in case you didn't know it. Besides, guys are in school, which means they're thinking about tomorrow. In about 5 or 6 years, they'll cut their ponytails and brown hair and smile about their college image. And they'll be dressing up their wives like dolls and taking them on vacations. We'll be fine too, Cindy argued. Yeah, Mother snorted. And what, I wondered, good things were in store for you. Domestic violence and poverty, and mind you, they don't change. Unless you're 60, when you won't have the strength to swing your fists. But Cindy wasn't convinced by any reasonable arguments, especially since she had an ally in Barry's mother. A few years ago, Betty had married and bore her young husband a son and a daughter. The grown son immediately became an extra in the apartment, and the happy wife and mother tried her best. Betty had 2 older children, daughter Veronica and son Arnold. Both of them already had families of their own. Now it was up to Barry. He's a good kid, just a hothead, Betty advertised of her troublemaking offspring. Barry just needs a woman to steer him in the right direction, and he'll be different in no time. Tame and domestic. Cindy befriended Betty, not even realizing that the cunning woman was using the knave girl for her own purposes. But it was clear to those around her. Wake up. Angelica shook her hands in response to the reproach that her aunt understood her better than her own mother. She sleeps and sees how she could get her treasure and send her away from home. Well, and in your eyes, she wants to seem like a cool democratic aunt. Why? It's convenient to be kind at other people's expense. But where will her kindness go when it comes to business? That's not true. Cindy said no. Aunt Betty's a good person. Aunt Betty's a phony, the mother said, lamenting how blinded her daughter's eyes were. It's all love. Harvey, Cindy's father, threatened to beat up his daughter's beau, but his wife only sighed and said, It's no use. It's no use. But we got to do something, he exclaimed. What, Harvey, what? Until Cindy realizes what she's in for, nothing will change. In our situation, only time will make things right. And it has, not the way Cindy's parents expected. One day, Angelica got a call from Betty saying they needed to talk. About what? The girl's mother asked calmly, but a bad feeling had already taken hold of her. Let's not talk on the phone, replied the parent of the hated Barry. Could you and Harvey come over at 7 o'clock? Well, all right. With Harvey, the poor woman pondered what that meant, But as it was, only one thought came to mind, and it was not a happy one. All right, why guess in vain? She finally decided. Angelica's worst fears were realized. When she and Harvey arrived at the Wesleys, the young ones were informed that Cindy was already 12 weeks pregnant. Angelica fearfully covered her mouth with the palm of her hand, and Betty said, "Tomorrow our babies are on their way to apply." "Oh my God," Angelica exclaimed. "That's what I was afraid of." I couldn't tell from the look on Harvey's face that he was excited about the prospect of becoming a father-in-law either. At least not for the next few years, and not to this man. "What's wrong with that?" Betty went on the offensive. "You're marrying your daughter to a man from a respectable family. He doesn't mind marrying. Everything's honorable, as it should be among decent people." "You're the decent one?" thought Angelique, but she said nothing. Only a scandal was not enough. "He works," continued the loving mother. "The family will be able to provide." "Of course I can," Barry said. "I'm a normal man. I understand." "A normal man would never lay a hand on a woman," Harvey pointed out with an angry glare. "He'll change," Betty said, poking her son in the side with her elbow. "I'll change," he repeated obediently. "Yes, but studying," the mother-in-law whispered. "What about school?" Betty snorted. "No one suggests dropping out of school." "Really?" Angelica sarcastically exclaimed and turned to her daughter. "Do you realize that your husband will not let you study? You will go on sabbatical leave, and something tells me that you will not come out of it." "She will be transferred to the correspondence department," triumphantly declared the future sister-in-law. Remembering that, except for 9 grades of secondary school, Betty had not received any education, Angelica grinned. Otherwise, she would have known that correspondence courses are not available for every specialty, and it certainly does not apply to medicine. "I wonder how it is possible to study medicine by correspondence," Angelica asked her daughter. "Why don't you say something? Enlighten Aunt Betty." Cindy sat with her head down. "I'm not going to go into academia at all," she said. "I'm going to go to classes and take care of the baby." "Oh, you're a sweetheart." Her mother shook her hands. "And how do you imagine it? Who's going to take care of the baby while you're at school?" "I, as you know, work." "Then you can work all you want," Betty said. "I'll take care of the baby." Angelica could hardly believe it, but being a smart woman, she preferred not to say anything. What was the use of letting her stilettos go? It would only turn her daughter against herself. Cindy needed a mother's support right now. It was clear that nothing good would come out of this marriage, but why kill the girl? It's wiser to save your strength for the future, and it will come in handy. "I see that you have already decided everything," said Angelica. The woman had to do her best to keep her voice from sounding doomed, and she seemed to have succeeded. "Well, Cindy, you can always count on Daddy and me." "Yes, daughter," Harvey nodded. "We'll always be there for you." "Well, that's different," said Betty in a satisfied voice, and the future in-laws agreed to meet over the weekend to discuss the details of the upcoming marriage and to celebrate the engagement. And Mom was right, wasn't she? And so was everyone else. How many times had Cindy said that phrase to herself? 100, 1,000, or more? Alas, after the wedding, her life was not for the better. The bride's parents had insisted on celebrating the marriage in a cafe, but Betty had snorted dismissively. Why spend money when you can leave it to the young people to live on? A wedding can be celebrated at home. That's the way it's been done for centuries. The first day was celebrated at the groom's house, the second at the bride's house. When Cindy learned that the wedding party would be held at home, she was disappointed, but she didn't let on. Maybe it's for the best, she thought. After all, I'm pregnant, and I don't really need a noisy celebration in a pub. The girl realized that she was talking herself into it. After all, the wedding, which is a lot of young people, cannot be quiet and rank. But the main thing is that we love each other, Cindy summed up, and the argument seemed to her quite weighty. Cindy's health left much to be desired, and the cheapest and not too elegant dress, bought by Valerie, emphasized her interesting position. The happy groom now and then unceremoniously and without a hint of tenderness to the future baby grabbed Cindy's belly, and at the same time looked proudly and meaningfully at his friends. "Look at me, I'm an eagle." Cindy was terribly unpleasant, but then she wrote it all off to nervousness, which is normal for a bride who is pregnant. The happy newlywed had been drinking himself to shreds and behaving outrageously. Barry squeezed the bride, and she, instead of making a remark to her new husband, smiled strangely, as if begging the guests to be more lenient. He kissed the lips of all the women present, sprinkling them with thick booze. And when the boyfriend of Elizabeth, Cindy's college friend, said that it was wrong to do that, he exclaimed indignantly, "Do you know who I am? I warned you." The young man said with an undercurrent of menace and walked away, not wanting the conflict. At the end of the evening, the newlywed climbed up on the table, took off his jacket and threw it on the floor, waving it vigorously in the air. "I married an awesome hottie today," he shouted. "I did it. I'm the coolest alpha male ever. Yo ho 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 whoa." His friends whistled back so encouragingly that the guests' ears popped. Cindy wanted to cry. Barry, either accidentally or in a fit of emotion, kicked a vase of Olivier. The salad instantly landed on his father-in-law's new suit, who was standing nearby. Harvey's face turned purple with anger, but not to spoil his daughter's holiday. Though what was going on looked less like a party than anything else in the world. The father of the bride looked at Angelica and realized that his wife had obviously thought the same thing. This was not how they had envisioned their only daughter's wedding. Cindy looked at her parents and looked down at them. "Dreaming, you idiot, of a beautiful wedding." She mocked herself, enjoyed it. The second day of the wedding, according to tradition, which so honored Betty, celebrated in the apartment of the bride's parents. After the party, the guests took a stroll through the city. The bridegroom had done well here too. He walked with Cindy in his arms and shouted obscenities to the approving cackling of his gopnik friends. "It's nothing," Betty said soothingly. From now on, the mother-in-law would take a moment to make fun of him and calm down. "It's a wedding after all." "Yes," the daughter-in-law nodded with a forced smile. "I understand." She wanted so much to believe that what Betty had said was true and that everything would be all right. But just as Ariana, with whom they'd already reconciled, had predicted, things had only gotten worse. A friend was also present at the wedding and was shocked. The sacramental phrase, "I warned you," remained unspoken. It was more important to support the friend who was already having a hard time. On Monday evening, when Barry had recovered from his hangover, the young couple went to look at their new home. They were to live in a private house on the outskirts of town. As the new husband explained to Cindy, his late grandmother used to live there. "How do you like it here?" Barry asked. The young wife didn't know what to say. The impressive layer of dust and numerous cobwebs, to put it mildly, did not inspire enthusiasm. "Well, it's okay," Cindy replied hesitantly. "I don't get it," the husband said with a barely perceptible but still threatening tone. "What's wrong with you? It's not like you're a lady. You can clean, wash, and all that." "But won't you help me?" she asked confusedly. "Listen," Barry answered carelessly, "it's your woman's business. My mom handled everything on her own." Yeah, I think that was the first time Cindy had ever thought unflatteringly of her mother-in-law. She was especially good at giving birth like a wind-up. At this point, Cindy feared her hubby might beat her. Judging by the look on Lucy's face, that was exactly what he intended to do. At least, that's what he was thinking of doing. Cindy knew the tone and the stare all too well, so she prudently decided to stay out of it. "Well then, I'll do it too," she said, trying to sound cheerful. "What was I saying?" Barry said in a patronizing tone. "No, of course I'll help you move cabinets, beds. I'm not a complete moron. I realize you need to keep our son safe." "Why a son?" the young woman asked with a smile. "What if we have a girl?" "Real men are born only sons," condescendingly said the husband. "That's it. I've shown you the work to be done." When they got back to the Weasleys' house, Betty asked her daughter-in-law, "How do you like the house?" "It's a good house," Cindy nodded discreetly. "Oh my," her mother-in-law said smugly, "you'll have your own place. Imagine what would happen if you married some college kid." The daughter-in-law only shrugged her shoulders. "That's right, nothing good," Betty summed up in her favorite triumphant tone. "We be living in rented apartments, and with us everything will be fine. And the main thing is that Valerka loves you very much." Who knows, maybe Valerka really loved his wife, but it seems he kept it carefully hidden. A month without abuse seemed like a fairy tale to Cindy, except that every fairy tale, even the longest one, comes to an end sooner or later. One day, Cindy was late for college. She was studying for the winter session and had to spend a lot of time in the library. What the hell's a winter session? Barry snapped at her. There's nothing to eat at home, and she's in libraries. I made a whole pot of borscht yesterday, Cindy said. Also, a powerful blow to the forehead stopped her from finishing. The young woman didn't even realize what it was. She just felt a shower of sparks come out of her eyes. And when Cindy blinked, she saw her husband's angry face. More? He asked, frighteningly calm. No? Then go ahead and make me something quick. Cindy made scrambled eggs with lard, toast, and herbs. Barry, after eating his supper, was visibly relieved. Are you offended? He asked conciliatingly. You shouldn't be. You'll thank me for guiding you to the right path. It was only as he finished his admonition that Barry remembered that his pregnant wife hadn't had dinner. Look, Cindy, I ate all of it, okay? He asked. Well, you better make yourself something. You gotta eat well and all that. Nothing. I'm fine, Cindy assured him. Oh, all right then. Barry muttered to himself and grabbed a bottle of beer from the refrigerator and went to watch TV. With a sigh, the pregnant wife took out bread, eggs, and a bunch of greens. After a little thought, Cindy decided to add some lard. Cindy's pregnancy was not easy, and in the 6th month, she took a leave of absence and went into labor. What's the news? Barry exclaimed when he heard about the hospitalization. The news is that I'm in danger of miscarrying, Cindy replied calmly. In such cases, they usually put you in the hospital. A threatened miscarriage? My husband asked incredulously. Really? That's like when the baby isn't born, right? Yes, the mother-to-be answered with a sigh and smiled involuntarily. When Barry talked about the future baby, he looked so touching that Cindy forgot about the main family problem. Well then, of course, Barry nodded. Go to your preservation or wherever. I want a healthy son. He'll be born healthy, Cindy smiled again. Watch me, my husband threatened, either jokingly or seriously. The month in the hospital was another favorable period in the young woman's life. Between the honeymoon and the hospital stay, Cindy truly realized how defenseless she was to her husband. Barry could get mad over the most insignificant thing, like not enough soup or too long, in his opinion, talking on the phone. And he didn't care if his mother called, let alone his friends. In moments of anger, the husband went on a rampage. In addition to violence, he used the most vile and disgusting words Barry could think of, and she would endure it without complaint. Cindy tried to tell her mother-in-law, but she quickly shut her down. No, said Betty. You've got your own family now, so you're on your own. You saw what you were buying. That's when Cindy realized how right her mother had been about her mother-in-law and everything else. It was obvious that Betty's promise to take care of the baby while Cindy was at school wasn't worth a dime, so it looked like the sabbatical was going to be a long one. If school doesn't just fall through the cracks, and something told me it would. When a tired, exhausted, and frightened Cindy arrived at the hospital, the doctor had no trouble determining what was going on in her family. The multicolored bruises all over her body were more eloquent than any words. Maria, the attending physician, examined Cindy, and as she dressed and was about to leave the exam room, the woman asked sympathetically, "This is not my case, but why don't you go to court or at least to the police? For what do you put up with the abuse of yourself and your future child? Do you even realize that an unhealthy family environment can affect the psyche of the unborn child? If you don't want to think about yourself, think about the baby." Cindy cried bitterly. Now, calm down," the kind woman said quietly, hugging her. "What do you think you're doing, crying? You mustn't worry. I will no longer embarrass," whispered the future mother. "I'll try." "You'll do your best," Maria said with feigned severity. That's it, my good girl. Next." 2 weeks later, Cindy was discharged. Her parents picked her up from the hospital. "Why don't we go back to our place?" Angelica suggested it. Though tempted, Cindy declined. But at home, she was surprised to find an unkempt girl. It seemed she lived on the next street over. "Oh," the girl squeaked when she saw Cindy. The young woman jumped out of the house and ran for her life. She walked at a brisk pace, greedily breathing in the February, almost spring air, while tears covered everything around her. Cindy wanted to call her parents, but changed her mind. No need to upset them. She reached the small public garden and sank down tiredly on a bench. Her cell phone rang. Ariana. Hello. No matter how hard Cindy tried to hold back her tears, her friend understood. Cindy, are you crying? What's wrong? Cindy, don't be silent. Ariana persisted. Barry. Barry what? Are you home now or are you still in the hospital? Aya. Tears were getting in the way of my speech. I'm home, Cindy sobbed. I mean, not really. Cindy, I don't understand you, Ariana said in desperation. Where are you? In the public garden, not far from the house. Why are you there? The classmate asked. It's not May. When Cindy finally managed to pull herself together and told her friend what had happened, she immediately said, Okay, call a cab and come to my place. I'll pay for it. Oh, Cindy, I don't know, Ariana said an hour later when they were having tea. I'd leave if I were you. Why? It's an option, by the way. Your parents are good, and they'll help you raise your child. Well, nothing good awaits you. Not only does he have his hands out, but he brings all sorts of weirdos into the house. God forbid, she bring in some kind of disease. Cindy sighed. Easy to say, but hard to do. Though it seemed easy to pack her things, move back to her parents' house, and then file for divorce. But now she realized that domestic tyrants, it turns out, are excellent psychologists. They morally pressurize their victims, skillfully using both the stick, that is intimidation and threats, and carrot. Under the carrot should be understood as apologies and excuses. Say, I was tired, it was a hard day. When Barry apologized, he looked like a child who had done something wrong. His spouse's remorse seemed sincere, and Cindy felt sorry for him. Who's going to feel sorry for you? An inner voice whispered, certainly not him. There was nothing to say, but Cindy didn't do anything about it. Her parents would help, of course, she sighed. Yeah, maybe, but I'd hate to involve them, and frankly, I'm afraid of change. Well, as you know, Ariana shook her head and taking her friend's hand in hers added, but know that the doors of our apartment are always open to you. I know, Cindy said quietly, a tear rolling down her cheek. Thank you. Okay, you don't have to cry. Maybe you want to sleep. I'm always sleepy now, she said with a smile. Then go to bed, Ariana said and put her arm around her shoulders and took her to her room. Sleep is a great medicine in general, and tonight Mom promised to make fish pie. It'd be delicious. That afternoon, Cindy slept over at a classmate's house, and the next morning, her husband showed up. Barry apologized profusely and said they were made for each other. Eventually, Cindy went home with her husband. Billy was born on April 12th, Cosmonaut's Day. He's gonna be an astronaut, laughed Cindy's parents, and the newly minted young father said, holding the warm blue bundle in his hands. I'll make a real man out of him. You and me, and we'll make such a mess. Betty smiled proudly. It seemed that this woman was about to swell with pride and burst like a soap bubble. Much to Cindy's displeasure, the gang of thugs was also here. Just like at the wedding, they made vulgar remarks, ignoring the staff. And when a doctor reprimanded them, one of the thugs responded, It's okay, Dad. Cindy's parents smiled, but her daughter realized how much effort it had cost them. Congratulations, said Angelica, handing the young parents a branded bag with rattles and a large package of diapers. Thank you, mother-in-law, cheerfully answered Barry. God forbid it's not the last time. God forbid. Angelica thought with a shudder. There's only one to raise, with a father like that. Further family life of the couple Gurianov developed according to the scenario, which Angelica feared. No, for the first month everything was fine. Barry found a part-time job, and all the money he earned gave his wife, leaving himself a trifle for lunch. He didn't drink, and after work he'd rush home and coo over Billy. Kid, Barry said fondly, man. The young mother's heart sank with emotion, and in her soul a time-its sprout of Cindy for happiness was budding. In a month's time the spouse was the same. He began again to raise his hand against his wife. The most frequent cause for abuse was the baby's crying. Shut him up, Barry said irritably. Cindy would soothe, and if he wouldn't shut up, her husband would tastefully proceed. What kind of mother are you if you can't quiet the baby, he said. Studying, as Cindy's mother and then Cindy herself had expected, was a dead end. 2 years had passed and it was time to take a sabbatical. Barry strongly resisted. A woman's place is at home with a baby and a stove. He cut him off. But I have to finish my studies, Cindy pointed out, and Billy could go to daycare. But there was no room at the daycare center, and the first in line were children 3 and older. Angelica needed to finish her seniority. No, well, if necessary, I'll think of something, said the mother. No, Mom, you don't have to, Cindy said. No. I'm the one who made this mess. I'm the one who's got to think. Well, what about your mother-in-law? Dad asked. I remember her beating her chest, saying she'd babysit the baby. And the mother-in-law is deflated, the young woman said with a wry grin. Eventually, Cindy was expelled for not starting classes. The young mother was worried, but her husband reassured her. In his own way, of course. What are you worrying about? Why does a woman need an education? Barry ranted. Cindy sighed. It was useless to explain to a man who had decided not to burden himself with education that sooner or later it would come back to bite him in the ass. She recalled how she had been disappointed that she had not gotten into medical school after high school and had been advised to apply to college. And that's where Cindy got lucky. After medical school, she planned to try again to get into college. Guy, how many plans and ambitions were there? The young woman thought, and she wanted to howl with self-pity. Come on, everything is fine, cheerfully said the husband, clumsily kissing his wife on the forehead. I'll go to the boys. That's it, I'm gone. And he was gone. God, I'm such an idiot, thought Cindy once again. It looked like the dream of becoming a doctor would have to be buried under the rubble of routine and happiness. And was there ever any happiness? A year later, Billy went to kindergarten, and Harvey and Angelica suggested that their daughter enroll in a paid secretarial course. After a short consideration, Cindy agreed. As a married woman, she was ashamed to accept material help from her parents, but there was no way out. With the pennies Barry received and the children's allowance, she couldn't do much with it. But Cindy would get a job and the money would be easier to come by. When Barry found out his wife had enrolled in the course, he made a big fuss. You want to be a secretary? He yelled. You think I don't know what you're thinking? I don't know what you're talking about, Cindy said in a trembling voice. You know what you mean. Her husband raged and swung at her. Don't hit Mommy, Billy shouted bravely, and that made the tyrant even more angry. You little puppy, he exclaimed indignantly. I'll have you now. But Cindy nimbly picked her son up and ran outside. I won't let anyone hurt you, she said, crying, and walked on her way. It's almost like that, but with Billy under my heart, Cindy thought bitterly as she remembered her return from the hospital. How far are we going? Cindy heard a vaguely familiar woman's voice and, realizing that she had almost knocked the young woman down, hurried to apologize. It's okay, it's no big deal, the woman smiled. How far are we in a hurry? No reason, she said, embarrassed. Daddy wanted to hit Mommy and I didn't let him, like an adult, Billy replied. Good girl, Mommy's protector is growing up, replied the woman and suddenly commanded. Come on, let's go to me. By the way, let's get acquainted. My name is Selena. Cindy, the young woman introduced herself with a smile. And my son's name is Billy. That's a good name, Selena said approvingly. And he's a great kid. Come on, let's go, let's go. Selena lived in the alley that led to the end of their street. I haven't seen you around here before, Cindy said thoughtfully. Maybe not, nodded the new acquaintance. I've been here a little over a month. My grandmother was buried 6 months ago, so I took the inheritance. There's that house. Oh yes, Cindy nodded, remembering the old woman who used to live here. I think her name was Martha and she hadn't been out of the house lately. Do you often run away from your husband like that? Selena asked, when the rest of the apple pie was eaten and the tea was drunk. Occasionally, Cindy replied evasively. And then apologies, reconciliation, a temporary lull, and then it's back to normal, she sighed. I know the story. Have you had that happen to you? She asked in surprise. Looking at the cheerful, companionable woman, Cindy couldn't believe she had the same problems. You, Selena corrected with a smile. No, I've been spared, but my cousin had. She did. Yes, but thank God, it's all behind her now. She's remarried now, and her new husband loves her to pieces. How did she do it? How? Selena shrugged. One day, Maria packed up her things, said she was tired of being patient, and gave the brawler a goodbye. "That's a lot to take in," Cindy said sadly. "So I guess I'm a sucker. It's in your hands." And that was the day Cindy made a new friend. Selena offered to let her and her son spend the night, and they stayed. And then she came home, apologizing and swearing, "I won't hurt you." And I didn't. But after a month, it was back to normal. Cindy was taking secretarial classes, and Barry suspected her of all sins. Whenever Cindy was late, her husband would get hysterical. She knew she had to make a change, but she was still afraid of change. "What are you afraid of?" Ariana wondered. "You have to work somewhere, one way or another. Who's going to pay your pension? Barry?" After graduating, Cindy took a job as a secretary at the school. Oddly enough, Barry was cool about it. Cindy assumed that her husband thought the school was a place where no one would infringe on her honor, and she was not far from the truth. In Barry's mind, it was a place where his wife wouldn't give him the horns. It was high school. At her new job, she made friends with Sarah, a cheerful, pretty, black-eyed brunette with a short, stylish haircut. They were the same age, so they hit it off quickly. Sarah taught computer science. When Sarah told her that she was graduating from Teachers College this year, Cindy suddenly felt sad. Now she could finish college and try her luck at medical school. What's the problem? Sarah wondered. "How old are you?" "Yeah, and what would I have to live on while I was in school?" Cindy grinned. Sadly, it looked like that train had left. "Oh, never say never," her coworker shook her head with a smile. When Billy went to first grade, Barry was offered a job as a trucker for a logistics company that was gaining momentum. Why, he told his wife over dinner, "I got the right category." And they promised good money. "That's great," Cindy smiled. The couple was in a quiet period now, and looking at them, no one would have guessed the problems in the family. Cindy tried to remember the good times and sadly recognized that they were sadly few. However, Lucy's successful employment with a private logistics company had been one of the brightest and most positive moments. And it was not only, and not so much about money, the employer hadn't cheated. Barry was really starting to make a decent living. But besides that, Cindy saw another plus. Sometimes her husband would be away for a week or even a month. Quite often, Barry would come back for a day or two, and then he'd be off again. He just didn't have time for abuse. In the absence of her husband, Cindy, though she was afraid to admit it even to herself, rested her soul. She looked better, began to go out with her friends to caves, shopping, or to the sauna. Son also pleased. The woman recalled with horror how nervous and withdrawn was Billy because of their scandals. But now he became calmer, more collected, and studied better at school. Feeling that life seemed to be getting better, Cindy cheered up. But the joy was premature. One day, returning from another long voyage, Barry mumbled, "We're talking." "I'm listening," nodded his wife warily. From Barry's tone, the conversation was unlikely to be pleasant. Cindy was afraid to even think about continuing it. "Listen to me," he said sharply. "If I find out you're seeing someone, I'll blow your head off and his, you know me." Cindy did. "Except it'd be nice to know what this is all about, wouldn't it?" "And don't give me the sheep eyes," Barry shouted. "What's the matter?" the wife exclaimed in bewilderment. "What the hell were you doing in the sauna?" he asked in a sly but unkind tone. "In the sauna?" Cindy repeated the question. "In the sauna, in the sauna. What do you do in a sauna?" Cindy shrugged her shoulders. "Warming up, steaming, swimming in the pool." Barry noticed that she was different, more self-confident or something. She looked different too. Fresher, better looking, more rested. He didn't like it and had an interesting thought. "There's someone else," Barry thought angrily. "I better find out who. Then we'll all be in trouble." "Warming, steaming, swimming," he repeated mockingly. "That's it. What else do you want to know?" Cindy asked indifferently. "Don't play dumb with me," he yelled. "You want to embarrass me? When my husband walks out the door, you go to the saunas? You? Wife? Mother?" "Barry." She was astonished to realize that her husband suspected her of infidelity. "What makes you think I'm cheating on you?" "I was just told that you were in the sauna," Barry said in a confused voice, which was amusing. "So?" Cindy snorted. "Do you think they only do, naughty things in the sauna?" Well, he said, and his wife grinned mentally. I guess this is the kind of thing where they say the hat on the thief is on fire. It was strange that Barry didn't fight this time. It wasn't weird, Sarah said thoughtfully when Cindy told her co-worker about it. It's just that you're different now. You're prettier and, more importantly, more confident, so he didn't dare hit you. And you know what? Your abuser is afraid of losing you. Cindy was glad to hear that. Maybe there was a holiday coming up on her street too. Cindy returned from her lunch break and was taking her desk when she received a call from an unfamiliar number. Hello, we don't know your name, said the caller. Are you Barry's wife? Yes, that's correct, answered Cindy. I'm sorry, but your husband was killed in a car accident. Would you be able to come down for a lineup? Yes, of course, she replied, and suddenly a pair of golden red goosebumps flickered in front of her eyes. Must be the pressure. Cindy grimaced and rubbed her temples. The principal came into the waiting room. Are you all right? Boris Mikhailovich asked, looking at her intently. Yes, no, my husband died. At her husband's funeral, Cindy had mixed feelings. She was truly sorry for Lucy, who had died in the prime of life. But listening to herself, she realized that she did not feel deep sorrow as befitted a widow. Apparently, my love has burned out, the widow decided. Cindy tried to cry at least for the sake of decency, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't squeeze out a tear. She looked at her son. Billy was as serious as ever, and he wasn't crying either. The mother-in-law walked up to them. If Cindy hadn't known it was her, she never would have believed it. Betty was graying, her face was completely white, and there were deep creases in the corners of her mouth. How are you? Cindy asked sympathetically, intending to hug Betty. She's still asking. Her mother-in-law roared, her voice sounding frightening. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? You're the one who drove him into the coffin. What are you talking about? Cindy was stunned. I'm telling you what I know. If it wasn't for you, he wouldn't have gotten that damn job. You're the one who couldn't get enough money. Damn you! Damn you! Damn you! Screamed the inconsolable mother. Billy blocked his mother with himself and said bravely, It's not true. Mom, calm down, son, Arnold reassured Betty. Cindy, for God's sake. I'm sorry. You realize? Yes, of course, she nodded. Of course I do. Arnold and some other guy took the sobbing woman away, and Cindy clung to Pasha and whispered, My protector. And then she let the tears flow. A couple days later, Cindy called Betty. Cindy, she said in a muffled voice, I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was saying. And I'm sorry about Barry too. He's been a pain in the ass. Oh no, my sister-in-law exclaimed. He who remembers old times is the one who's out of sight. You're kind, sighed Betty. Nadenka, here's something else to call. I've been thinking, let's all come to my place for 9 days. Okay, agreed Cindy. I'll talk to the girls. They'll help with dinner. That'd be great. Thank you, daughter. The 40th birthday party was at the house where the young Guryanovs lived. Daughter, said Betty, when the women were alone, you can live in this house as long as you want. I bequeathed it to my granddaughter. It's a place to live. Thank you, Betty, Cindy replied, and the women hugged. Don't forget the old woman, she smiled sadly. Of course, smiled back at her sister-in-law and another. If you need help, don't hesitate. We're not strangers after all. Too bad for her, she said with a sigh to Ariana, Sarah, and Celine, who had volunteered to help clear the table. That's for sure, Ariana nodded. No one would wish to bury their own child, but one must move on with one's life. Your life, for example, you might say is just beginning. Cindy could see where her friend was going. Well, it's about to start. As the memories lulled her to sleep, Cindy fell asleep. When she woke up at 6 in the morning without an alarm clock, she felt an unprecedented rush of energy. She was no longer afraid of change. With a sweet stretch, Cindy got out of bed without hurrying. Today, she wanted to make breakfast for herself and her son. Not scrambled eggs or sandwiches, but something special. Playfully finishing her breakfast, Cindy began to dress up. When Billy awoke to the appetizing smells, his mother was already in full dress. Mom, you look so pretty today, exclaimed the son. Cindy was very pleased to receive a compliment from her son. But the woman suddenly realized with horror that she didn't know how to respond. I just had a good night's sleep, she smiled. Well, yes, Billy nodded. You went to bed early last night. I got in at 9, and you were already asleep. Yes, nodded his mother in response. I've been so tired lately. I'm exhausted. I'm so sleepy. Well, let's have breakfast, or you'll be late for school. I fried some meat dumplings, and here's some stuffed tomatoes. That's the theme. We're having a royal breakfast today. You bet. Eat up, my good man. Cindy was on her way home from work, and as she passed the office of the medical center, she saw an ad that read, Administrator wanted. Obeying a sudden impulse, the young woman determinedly pulled the door open. What a laugh, she thought. Unfinished medical school with 10 years experience as a school secretary. That's quite the track record. Cindy was about to turn around and walk away when a handsome man in his 40s, wearing an impeccably tailored dark gray suit, inexplicably appeared next to her. What do you want? He asked, smiling affably. No, I think I'll go, Cindy blurted out. You're here about something, but you're leaving already, the man laughed. Well, no, I'm not letting you go now that you're here. I take it you're here about the job. The man asked, the heart manager, whose name was Max. Been there, done that? Well, yes, Cindy decided. Why did you choose our company? I saw the ad and came. She wanted to blurt out, but something told her she shouldn't answer that way. I dreamed of becoming a doctor since childhood, but it didn't work out, the young woman replied and was embarrassed. Well, it's like that. I probably don't fit you. I'll go. I'm talking nonsense here. Well, why nonsense? Objected her manager. Go on. I'm very interested. So why didn't it work out? And then Cindy, completely out of the blue, told a complete stranger her life story. She told him everything without holding anything back. That's what happens, Max said thoughtfully. At first it's all darkness, and then there it is, the light at the end of the tunnel, when you don't expect it. It's not an easy story, but I guess it was meant to be. Yeah, I guess so. You know, Cindy, you'd have a chance to realize your dream here. The man smiled slyly. You do? I do. We're just starting a program at the center where you can go to medical school. You will receive a stipend of 2 minimum wages. Interesting. Cindy felt dizzy and out of breath. She could feel it in her bones. This was it. Very much, sighed Cindy. So how about we fill out an application for training? But of course, if you're interested in the receptionist position, then. As if in a dream, she filled out the form and handed it to the HR manager. Max nodded, running his eyes over her. If you're approved, we'll call you within the next 2 days. But do I have a chance? Cindy asked breathlessly. There's always a chance, laughed the office owner. But with a name like that, I'd certainly hope for the best. Well, let's hope for the best, she smiled. Goodbye. Goodbye. What followed was more like a fairy tale. The next day, Cindy got a call from the HR manager. Cindy, I have great news for you. He announced triumphantly. You've been accepted into medical school. Congratulations. I don't believe it, whispered the shop woman and pinched her ear. God, am I really awake? You're not kidding me, are you? No, pranking is not our job, Max said cheerfully. From the 1st of August, the preparatory courses will begin. By that time, you need to provide the following documents. Write it down. After talking to the HR manager, Cindy fell onto the bed and laughed out loud. She suddenly felt like sharing the news. A dog barked in the yard. Here comes the Sonny, she rejoiced. Mom, how about some food? Billy asked. I'm going to heat up the pilaf now, his mother announced solemnly. And while it's warming up, I got something to tell you. It's good, I hope. Very. So you and I are both students now. Billy laughed as he ate the pilaf. Well, it turns out we are, Cindy said. I did the math, and it turns out that when you graduate, I'll be a senior. That's funny, my son cheered. Her friends all said it was something to celebrate. I'm all for it, she assured him. I look forward to seeing you all at my place. We'll celebrate the beginning of my new life. Cindy couldn't remember a time when she'd been in such high spirits. She had enough energy for 10 people. Cindy was enjoying her studies unparalleled, and at the end of the first session, she was awarded an increased scholarship. It was like a second win for this woman who had suffered. Life was moving on, and now Cindy could say with certainty that she was doing well. Cindy had a wonderful son, loving and understanding parents, and loyal friends ready to help at any time of the day or night. And she also had a new meaning in life, which seemed to have been irrevocably lost. It was definitely worth living for. 10 years later. "We're breaking up," Cindy said flatly. "And don't look at me like that. It's not gonna work out." The pumped-up handsome man, clearly not used to rejection, looked at her perplexed, and it seemed even resentful, and muttered, "Am I ugly?" Cindy grinned. So much for generational misunderstanding, and all of Selena's advice to have an affair with a much younger man. Come on, she jabbed herself. What's Selena got to do with it? You've got your own head on your shoulders. And that head finally realized that this kind of relationship was not for Cindy. "No, Steve, you're very handsome," she hastened to reassure her beau. "But I think you're too good for me, and I'm embarrassed by that." Kara smiled smugly, and Cindy read her former favorite's mind. Okay then, it was written on his smarmy face. Well, why would she, a smart woman and an excellent doctor, want this narcissist? That's just it, she didn't. It was going to be a busy day. She had a meeting with her friends in an hour. Every Saturday, the charming quartet of women gathered at her favorite cafe. The ladies drank wine and discussed the events of the past week or the issues on the agenda. Cindy went outside, hailed a cab, and sat down on a bench and thought, "Well, why am I so unlucky in love?" She thought sadly, or maybe there isn't any. When Cindy graduated with a red diploma, she had no trouble finding a job. The medical center needed a therapist, and she was invited to work there. Later, she learned that Max, the same her manager with whom they'd had a heart-to-heart talk, had insisted she apply. Cindy was flattered, but it was a flower. Max had his eye on her back then, but at the time, the her manager was married. It couldn't even be called a marriage, the man confided. "We lived by inertia." She nodded. She had lived by inertia, but she had also lived like that, by inertia. So she'd have found a soulmate. That's what it turned out to be. That's why the affair was short-lived. Cindy couldn't live without love. You can't build a relationship on soulmates. She remembered Barry. She'd been burned, but she loved him. For that alone, Cindy was grateful to her late husband in his memory. Max and Cindy had parted as friends. They continued to work together, and then Max was invited to work for some cool advertising agency. Then there was Victor, a neighbor in the private sector, also a widower. And then there was Steve, handsome, athletic, charming, and nothing. Anyway, she's had enough. I have a job I love, loyal girlfriends, a great son, Cindy thought. That's more than enough to enjoy life. When Cindy entered the cafe, all her friends were already there. "You're late today," Sarah said. "The young lover must have held you up," Selena suggested with an innocent smile. "He did," Cindy countered. "It took forever for him to realize I was giving him my resignation." "What? You blew Steve off?" Ariana's head snapped up. "Is he the center of the world?" She grinned. "Actually, Steve is the same age as my son, and I'm embarrassed by that." "And you told him that?" "I did," Cindy nodded. "I explained my embarrassment by saying that Kira was supposedly too good for me." Before she could finish, her friends burst out laughing. "Yeah," Sarah laughed. "You're very self-critical." Cindy finished her glass of wine and said, "Okay, girls, it's nice to be with you, but I got to go." "What's wrong?" Selena asked. "Don't tell me you're in a hurry to go on a date with the man of your dreams for whom you gave Steve your resignation." "Oh, guys." Cindy rolled her eyes theatrically. "Are you guys thinking about something else for a change?" "We're worried about you, aren't we?" the friend said. "Thank you very much," she bowed jokingly and then added seriously. "But today I finally realized that these affairs are not for me, and neither is love. Well, now I'm leaving you. Tomorrow I have a meeting with the most beloved man in the world, so I have a lot of preparations to make." Lingerie candles. Sarah winked understandingly. "Yeah," Cindy grinned. "I'll have to bake his favorite liver pies." "Billy's coming," Selena guessed, remembering his love of baked liver pies. "And not alone," she smiled. "Billy's coming with a girl." "Good for you, Godson," Ariana said approvingly. "Well, if it's with a girl, sure." "What kind of girl?" "I don't know yet. I take it she's from the Institute." Billy was in his 5th year at the Mechanical Engineering Department of the Regional Polytechnic Institute. He was going for a red diploma, which was to be defended in a month. Billy studied a lot, but it did not interfere with the personal life of the charming blue-eyed brunette. Cindy was proud to say that Billy was like her. Mother and son were similar not only in appearance, but also in character. The most important and obvious similarity was the eagerness to study, the desire to learn new things, and as a result, to develop. But the loving mother had one more parallel to draw. This parallel was personal life. About the personal life of Billy, a student of mechanical engineering faculty, there were the most incredible rumors. The tall and handsome brunette liked not only female students, but also graduate students and young female teachers. At the same time, no one had ever seen Billy with a girl, and this gave rise to a lot of rumors. Some said that Wesley was an Alfonso. They said that Billy had been seen with a beautiful, well-dressed woman who was about 20 years older than him. When Billy showed one of his classmates a photo of him with his mother, the legend was all that was left. The beautiful, well-dressed woman was Cindy. But the people did not rest on this, and after a while rumors of his unconventional orientation. Soon everyone was convinced that this is not true. The future promising engineer's girlfriend turned out to be Juliana, the institute's barmaid. And what did he find in her? Whispered students, hurt by the fact that the blue-eyed handsome man ignored them in favor of some barmaid. Only Sarah, Billy's classmate, had thought to put the question differently. Maybe she had found it, not him? The shrewd girl was not far from the truth. Julian had a pretty doll face, a seductive shape, and a desire to marry. A rich one, if only. The girl was sure that her virtues were enough for that. But the barmaid, who did not suffer from excessive intelligence, did not think that life is much more complicated than she thought. Once Juliana worked as a waitress in a cafe, and there she drew the attention of a respectable gentleman, which people called daddies. In anticipation of a beautiful life, the girl quit the cafe. And 3 months later, Mickey, as the name of the sponsor, found another shallow hunter for easy money. Left without a job and a rich daddy, Julian became despondent. But then it hit her. We should go out hunting, she thought cheerfully. Julian now realized that the age-old daddy was a temporary option anyway. No, yet one should look for an object for a permanent relationship, and in the long run for a strong and happy marriage. Therefore, the best place for hunting was a cafe where the golden youth hung out. The girl had some money left, enough to sit in an elite institution with taste. And if she was lucky, she wouldn't have to spend it. Juliana went to the hairdresser, chose the best dress bought by her daddy, and went in search of prey. 15 minutes later, she was approached by a handsome, expensively dressed major, whose name was Harry. The young people got to talking. Julian was ashamed to admit that she had nothing to do with the golden youth and had quit their cafe not long ago. And the reason for the dismissal? Not thinking long, the girl said that her father is the general director of the company and her mother is the manager. I see, family business. What kind of company? Harry asked with interest. Ah, well, so it's not here, but Julian found herself. The girl was not modest about her education either. She told her new acquaintance that she studied at the university at the Faculty of Economics. Respectfully stretched out the guy. An economist, then? Yes, Julian smiled disarmingly and thought that in a way she was. The young men began dating. Harry turned out not to be some kind of major slacker, but an aspiring entrepreneur. He had a small company producing plastic windows. Harry gave the girl flowers and boxes of expensive chocolates. And one day the guy told Julian that he wanted to meet her parents. The girl didn't know whether to laugh or cry. For once, Juliana met a wealthy young man, and she could not even introduce Harry to her family, all because of her lies. Julian's parents had nothing to do with business. Her father was a construction worker and her mother was a supermarket clerk. And my parents are away right now, Julian replied. That's too bad, the boy replied. For how long? A month and a half to 2 months. You know what? Then I'll introduce you to my parents. Really? Julian was embarrassed. Well, why not? The meeting with Harry's parents took place on Saturday, and it was unforgettable. On the occasion of such an important event, Julian wore a little black dress, which was also donated by a former sponsor. I remember that at the time she was surprised that such a simple-looking dress cost a lot of money. Remember, it's called noble simplicity, Mickey said instructively. And it cost a lot of money, a lot more than brightness and glitter. Julian thought this dress would be a great way to meet the parents of a young rich man. She chose boat shoes and a clutch, unencumbered with decorations, and did her makeup in nude colors. Julian was sure that the noble simplicity would be appreciated. "Come in, don't be shy," Harry said cordially. He took the girl by the hand and led her into the hall, where the guy's parents and a fancy table were waiting for them. "Mom, Dad," said the boy solemnly, "meet Julianne. This is Julianne, my girlfriend." Seeing Harry's father, Juliana automatically backed away. In front of her was Mickey, her ex-daddy. He was staring at Julianne, and she thought he was going to say something mean. But nothing of the sort happened. Harry's father, as if nothing had happened, greeted the girl, introduced himself, and then introduced his wife. Lucy was a beautiful, slender, and sophisticated woman. What did these daddies lack? Thought Julian involuntarily at the sight of the mature beauty. Oh yes, and she thought that such embarrassments happen only in the movies. "Julian, what do you do?" Lucy asked with a smile. The girl's tongue stuck to the sky, and it was incredibly difficult to lie in the presence of a person who knew the whole truth about her. "And Julian is an economics student," Harry answered for her. "Really?" smirked Mickey. It was unlikely that his wife and son noticed the smirk. And if they did, so what? They didn't realize anything anyway. I wonder if they realized the antics of the father of the family. Giggled Julianne to herself. "Good girl," praised Lucy. "Who are your parents, if it's no secret?" The girl remained silent, and Harry, writing it off to her excitement, came to the rescue again. Julianne's parents have a firm in St. Petersburg. Even so, the head of the family nodded ironically. More than anything else in the world, the girl wanted to run away from this house. She scolded herself. "Now I have to think of a way to get out of here. It's a shame, of course, but Mickey won't let us be together. And what to do with businessmen parents?" Hearing the smartphone trinkle, notifying the owner of a messenger message, Julianne apologized. "Probably the parents," she said. Nothing," Lucy nodded understandingly. The message was sent from a familiar, though already deleted, number. "If you don't want to get in trouble, get out of here and quick." "I don't want you here," read Julianne. The abundance of exclamation marks clearly indicated that her visit had excited Mickey beyond belief. "Okay, whatever you say," Julianne thought with a chuckle. "I didn't really feel like it." "You'll have to excuse me, but I have to run," Julianne said with regret in her voice. "So soon?" Lucy was surprised, and there was a note of regret in her voice. Julianne was terribly embarrassed, but as they say, out of sight, out of mind. It was better this way, and the fact that she'd lied to Harry out of her ass didn't matter, or rather, it had been relegated to the background. But her former relationship with Mickey is no joke. Sooner or later, all secret things come to light. The girl left the hospitable apartment forever, and since then she and Harry never saw each other again. He, of course, called and wrote, but Julianne, not without regret, put the guy in the CS. When she told this story to her friend Vala, she laughed until she fell. "Yes," laughed the girl, "relationships were doomed from the beginning, by virtue of aggravating circumstances." "Stop laughing," Julianne shouted. "By the way, guys like that don't just walk down the street." "That's true," Valia nodded seriously. "But on the other hand, he's not the only one. And men like you, so it's too early to be discouraged. But I won't go to the cafe for golden youth anymore." "You don't have to," my friend exclaimed. "You know, Julian, there aren't really that many good guys among them. It's just that you were lucky at the time. And most of them are mama's boys and daddy's boys. And most of them have a nasty temper. Do you want that? What are you suggesting? You want to get married? What's wrong with university students?" "Yes, I know. Now you say that they have no money, not counting the penny scholarship. That's true, but there's a catch." "What's the difference?" "It's obvious. They don't have anything now, but when they get their diplomas and get on their feet." Julian thought about it. It's true. Most of the guys who got their degrees had a good life. And yes, unlike the majors, they were independent. A few days later, while surfing the internet for job openings, Julian saw an ad. Cafe at Polytechnic Institute needs a barmaid. So maybe it was fate. Interesting guy, Julian said as if indifferently, looking at the dark-haired young man with the beautiful blue eyes. Interesting, nodded Catherine, one of the female students she had already made friends with. But what's the use? He's what? The barmaid did not finish, but the girl understood everything perfectly. No, she shook her head, although and such rumors were rumored. But to me, Billy just doesn't have any experience with girls. I wouldn't be surprised if he was still a virgin. All right, Julian, I'll have 2 scoops of pistachio ice cream with chocolate syrup. And a coffee. No experience, you say? Julian muttered to herself as Catherine walked away, thinking to herself, maybe he just hasn't met a real woman. The guy left the cafe, unaware that he was being watched closely. At the next break, the enterprising barmaid went on the offensive. When Julian saw through the glass doors that the blue-eyed brunette was heading for the cafeteria, she tinted her lips and undid the top 2 buttons of her blouse. Listening to you, putting a velvety quality to her voice, the barmaid said as the guy approached the serving counter. I would like a cup of coffee and a pastry basket, the customer asked politely. Julian asked, leaning against the counter so that her lush breasts were at Billy's eye level. Suddenly, she noticed that the guy was blushing. It made her laugh, but in her heart, Juliana was triumphant. She had clearly made an impression on the guy. Well, yeah, he replied embarrassedly. It's good for the brain. You're in luck. Julian smiled flirtatiously. We're having a special today. 2nd brownie for free. So your brain will be working as it should. There was a hint in the last phrase, but it was obvious that the boy didn't understand anything. Well, he doesn't have to. He'll figure it out later. Well, in the meantime, a promotion. Billy was surprised. I'd never heard of any promotions here. We have a new boss now. Julian lied with inspiration, and they've decided to have a promotion. The 100th customer would get a 2nd product for free. It was on the eve of the 8th of March. On this occasion, the Institute organized a huge party. The party was attended not only by students, teachers, and administration, but also by junior staff, checkroom attendants, cleaners, canteen attendants, and everyone else. When the white dance was announced, Julian didn't hesitate to invite Billy. The barmaid clung to him in a way that made him uncomfortable, and half an hour later, the student was already opening the dorm room door. Please, Billy said with a smile. The news of the affair between the student and the barmaid spread through the institute with the speed of a spring forest fire. The boy's friends went into a stupor. Billy's birthday was celebrated in the dormitory. The girls were preparing a festive dinner, and Julian was busily commanding the parade. The barmaid didn't mind the meaningful glances the girls gave her. Julian's look said, envy and silence, and they were, needless to say, jealous. The boys had their own point of view. What are you doing, Pacan? Evan asked perplexedly when the guys went out for a smoke. It was just an option for a couple of nights. Billy shrugged philosophically. Whatever, Stephen grinned. You can tell a bird by its flight. Guys, no offense, Weasley said firmly, but my personal life is my business, and Julian is my choice. She's my girlfriend, and I want you to treat her with respect. No problem, the friends said in unison, raising their hands as if in surrender. Are you sure? Billy asked, confused. Actually, I took 2 tests and went to the doctor, Julian said resentfully. Or don't you believe me? No, I don't. Billy hastened to reassure her. Well, if that's the case, let's go to my place. I'll introduce you to my mom. If that's the case, the girl exclaimed. You mean if I wasn't pregnant, you wouldn't introduce me to your mom? Julian, don't twist things around, the guy grumbled. Frankly, Julian's pregnancy was a no-brainer right now. He was about to defend his diploma. Billy didn't get enough sleep, and his beloved was throwing tantrums on the spot. However, he realized that the child was not to blame. Billy was far from denying paternity. He would marry Julian, as an honest man should. Billy suddenly thought of his mother. When he was a boy, he had heard Grandma Betty and his father say more than once that his mother had tied the baby down and should be grateful to them for covering up the sin. He didn't understand anything at the time, but as he got older, he realized it wasn't that simple. One day, 8-year-old Billy overheard a conversation between Grandma Angelica and an old friend, and she said that it was Grandma Betty who insisted on marriage. And when Billy was 10 or 11 years old, he wondered what his mother had to thank his father and Grandma Betty for. As it turned out, there was nothing to be thankful for. His father had been a constant libertine, and Grandma Betty had been self-effacing. As Grandma Angelica said, she's got her idol and is enjoying married life with her young husband. Why am I bringing all this up? Thought Billy perplexedly, and then he realized he and his mother had similar fates. Gender adjusted, of course, except that Julian doesn't fight, but that's pretty much it. And another thing, she and her mother are goal-oriented people. Perhaps their life principle can be summarized in the words of a famous saying, live and learn forever. Mother received a medical degree when she was already 38, and this is not everyone decides, while they're halves. Well, aren't you an idiot? Billy chided himself. I love Julianne, and I don't care whether she's a barmaid or a member of the State Duma. The young men got out of the minibus and walked toward the Gurianot's house. It was a pretty house, Juliana noted. The house really did look the part. The plastic windows, put in when her father was still alive, looked as good as new. The house was finished with gray and white siding and a silver metal roof. The improvised landscaping using car tires and kefir bottles also looked very nice, especially now when peonies, violets, and irises were blooming in the beds of tires, exuding a marvelous smell. Glad you like it, Billy smiled. A beautiful, slender brunette with the same blue eyes as his came out onto the porch. You didn't tell me you had a sister, Julianne said. So I don't have a sister, laughed Billy. Meet my mom, Cindy. Come on, Cindy, the woman grinned. I'm not that old yet. Just call me Cindy. How young she is, Julianne thought enviously. Or maybe she just had an early birth. Julianne, what do you do? Cindy asked, and she grinned. She was immediately reminded of another acquaintance. I'm a barmaid, she answered, looking at her potential mother-in-law defiantly. A barmaid? But Billy told me you were from college. I am from the Institute. I work there as a barmaid. What's wrong? Not good enough. Julianne, I don't think I've done anything to offend you, Cindy said. And no, I have nothing against barmaids. I married a handyman as a student, so. Mom, don't mind me, my son intervened. Julianne's just nervous. It's normal in her condition. Hormones, you know. Oh my God, Cindy burst out. Guys, you have to warn me. What difference would it have made? The girl squinted. Julianne, why are you being so hard on yourself? Of course, it wouldn't have changed anything. But this isn't about buying a dog, is it? And by the way, I'm a doctor, and I know a lot of specialists. Good specialists. No thanks, she shook her head. We in the regional center with this problem is not. Well, as you know. She doesn't sound sincere, Cindy told her friends. Oh, I can feel it in my heart that this isn't gonna end well. Can't Billy see past his own nose? Cindy, Ariana said mockingly. Doesn't this remind you of anything? Imagine it does, she exclaimed. Is that a reason to let your son get involved with who knows who? I'm pretty sure that that woman's got Billy wrapped around her finger. I don't mean that in a reproachful way. It's just that you know that when you're in love, you think, this is the only person I'll ever be happy with. Isn't that right? Yes, Cindy nodded sadly. So what do we do now? What? Selena hummed cheerfully. You need a man. Who's talking about what? And she's right. Ariana and Sarah said it together. Oh, come on. A week later, Cindy met her daughter-in-law's parents. They turned out to be nice people, and the future mother-in-law thought, maybe I'm getting myself worked up for nothing. Perhaps Julianne really nervous, as any girl when meeting the groom's family. And then there are the hormones. The wedding was decided to play in the banquet hall of a cafe, the owner of which was a friend of the bride's mother. Will make us a good discount, winked Anna. The wedding was fun, but Cindy suddenly felt like she was losing her son. What's the big deal? Ariana asked, perplexed. Yes, the boy has his own family now, but you're not going to stop being his mother. Come on, friend, smile. She was wearing a national costume in which Ariana was handing out pancakes as godmother. Her friend had beet blush on her cheeks, and looking at her, it was impossible not to smile. There, that's better, exclaimed the charming peddler of pancakes. But on the soul of the mother of the groomed scratched Cass. There were only a few days left before the diploma defense, and Billy was scrambling, and his young wife was demanding attention, and she was cranky. "Billy," she called out. "What?" the husband asked absent-mindedly. "I want strawberries." Billy almost howled, but held back. 15 minutes ago, he had returned from the store where he had gone at the request of his wife, who wanted bananas. Billy had brought a bunch, but Julian had barely taken a bite of one banana and now demanded strawberries. "Julian, I don't have time for this," Billy replied patiently. "Would you wait half an hour?" "No, I won't," she said in a tone that didn't tolerate objections. "Then go yourself," suggested her husband. "They say it's good for pregnant women to walk." "I don't feel well." "Well, all right." Billy sighed and got up from the table. Every day, God knows he tried to be understanding, but every day it was getting harder and harder. "Be patient," his mother said. She'd give birth and be the same. The young father-to-be only sighed heavily. "When will that be?" "Billy, I don't think your mom likes me," Julianne once told me. "Why would you say that?" Actually, she wasn't far from the truth. Billy knew it was true, although Cindy had the wisdom to hide it. "Well, I'm not blind." She also doesn't believe it's your baby. "Did she tell you that herself?" Her husband asked, busy preparing his defense as usual. "Well, not directly, of course," Julianne stretched out. "But the last time she came to visit us." "What was it?" "Oh, nothing," she said casually. "Anyway, Billy, it would be better if your mother didn't come here anymore." "All right, I'll tell her that," Billy sighed. "Just don't tell her I told you about it." "Okay," Julian kept up. "Okay, I won't. But how am I going to explain it to her?" "How do you want to explain it to her?" she replied nonchalantly. "Well, tell her there's no place to sleep." "Well, I understand," Billy nodded. "What's there to yell about? You want positive emotions, but you're yelling like a victim." "Calm down, I heard you." Honestly, the wife smiled. Julian's mood was changing like the weather. "Honestly honest," he said, kissing his wife on the temple. Billy never dared to tell his mother what his wife had asked. Sometimes he felt like he was caught in the middle of some terrible element. That's basically what it is, Billy thought. I'm between two fires, and fire is an element. He had no idea what to do in such a delicate and unpleasant situation. After all, Billy loved them both and wanted everyone to live together, but it seemed he wanted too much. Cindy didn't recognize her son, and that was the issue on another Saturday agenda. "Well, I don't know," shrugged Sarah. "It seems to me like you're making a storm in a glass of water." "No, I'm not," Cindy said thoughtfully. "As soon as I offer to come over and bring groceries, Billy says he doesn't have to and promises to come himself." "So what?" snorted Ariane. "The newlyweds want to be alone. Julian's pregnant, so there's no time for guests. Besides, the son promised to come himself." "He's not coming," she said. "Well, honey, the kid's got a defense coming up, no time to travel, and he promised." "Well, I don't know, so you don't take offense." "Yeah, I guess," Cindy mumbled. "I'm a bit of a mess." "So why would you go to the sanitarium?" Selena asked cautiously. "Get some rest, get better." "I'm not going to a sanitarium." She waved her hand. Lately, Cindy had been having some serious heart problems. Her colleagues urged her to go to a sanatorium, but Cindy didn't want to hear about it. "Not yet," she told cardiologist Veretinikov with a sigh. "Medic, and so careless about your health," strictly reprimanded her colleague. "Stephen, I solemnly swear to you, as soon as I deal with all my affairs, I will take care of my health," said Cindy with a smile. "So why should I swear?" A little better, grinned Veretinikov. "It's your health, and it doesn't ask about your affairs." The doctor was right, of course, but Cindy knew that until she could figure things out for herself, she wouldn't be able to rest easy. "Well, you shouldn't," said Sarah. "You're tearing up your soul, not to mention your heart." But Cindy shook her head stubbornly. Waking up at dawn, Cindy remembered that her son had a defense today and decided to call. Billy answered right away. "Hi, honey," she said with a tenderness that made her son's heart ache. "Hi, May. How are you feeling?" "Fighting, I hope." "You bet." "Well, good for you. Break a leg." "Go to hell," Billy said cheerfully, and mother and son laughed merrily. Almost like before, Cindy thought sadly, but almost. The defense of the diploma went brilliantly. The classmates celebrated the event in a cafe, and a grand banquet was planned for the evening in the dormitory. "Are you coming?" Stephen asked. "No, guys, I'll pass." Billy said no. "I'd love to, but, well, you know what I mean." "Yeah," Stephen nodded. "Home family. Hello to your wife." Back home, Billy was in for another round of hysterics. "I'm sitting here alone and you're having fun." Julian said it unhappily, not even asking how the defense had gone. But Julianne. Billy didn't know what to say. "Okay, forget it," she said. And then suddenly, with a painful wince, she clutched her stomach. "What's the matter?" Billy asked fearfully. "No, it's nothing, it's fine," Julian whispered, but it sounded unconvincing. "What about it, though?" "The doctor said it's a miscarriage." "What?" "Julian, this is not a joke. Should we call an ambulance?" "No, don't do that. The doctor says it happens from time to time." "So now we have to call an ambulance every time?" "I don't know," Billy shrugged. "I think it's better to be safe." "Billy, I know what's best for me," Julian said softly. "Well, okay, if that's the case." After his diploma, Billy wondered if he could find a job. He surfed the internet, went on interviews, but so far, alas, to no avail. Julian grumbled that her husband wasn't spending enough time with her, to which Billy remarked, "Julian, I apologize profusely, but what are we going to live on? On your barmaid's salary? What's wrong with my job?" Julian stood up. "Yes, I have no higher education, and I work as a simple barmaid, but you knew who you were marrying." "What's that got to do with it?" He was surprised. "But you have nothing to do with everything," shouted the wife so loudly that even choked. "And your mother also nothing to do." "She's definitely got nothing to do with it now," Billy said, trying to be calm. "That's it, honey. I'm out of here." "Where to?" Julian was stunned, obviously hoping to continue the verbal altercation. Billy even began to suspect that she was enjoying these skirmishes. "To the interview." He cut off and left the apartment. Missed again, Billy thought dejectedly. Another failed job interview. It was all about the same lack of work experience. Except where to get it? He made his way to the public garden and looked over at the pub. His mother had given him some money in honor of his diploma, so Billy could afford to drink with grief. And not only that, he was already finishing a mug of cold and wildly tasty beer when Julianne called. "Well, I understand," Billy nodded. "What's there to yell about? You want positive emotions, but you're yelling like a victim." "Calm down, I heard you." Honestly, the wife smiled. Julian's mood was changing like the weather. "Honestly honest," he said, kissing his wife on the temple. Billy never dared to tell his mother what his wife had asked. Sometimes he felt like he was caught in the middle of some terrible element. That's basically what it is, Billy thought. I'm between two fires, and fire is an element. He had no idea what to do in such a delicate and unpleasant situation. After all, Billy loved them both and wanted everyone to live together, but it seemed he wanted too much. Cindy didn't recognize her son, and that was the issue on another Saturday agenda. "Well, I don't know," shrugged Sarah. "It seems to me like you're making a storm in a glass of water." "No, I'm not," Cindy said thoughtfully. "As soon as I offer to come over and bring groceries, Billy says he doesn't have to and promises to come himself." "So what?" snorted Ariane. "The newlyweds want to be alone. Julian's pregnant, so there's no time for guests. Besides, the son promised to come himself." "He's not coming," she said. "Well, honey, the kid's got a defense coming up, no time to travel, and he promised." "Well, I don't know, so you don't take offense." "Yeah, I guess," Cindy mumbled. "I'm a bit of a mess. So why would you go to the sanitarium?" Selena asked cautiously. "Get some rest, get better." "I'm not going to a sanitarium." She waved her hand. Lately, Cindy had been having some serious heart problems. Her colleagues urged her to go to a sanatorium, but Cindy didn't want to hear about it. "Not yet," she told cardiologist Veretinikov with a sigh. "Medic, and so careless about your health," strictly reprimanded her colleague. "Stephen, I solemnly swear to you, as soon as I deal with all my affairs, I will take care of my health," said Cindy with a smile. "So why should I swear?" A little better, grinned Veretinikov. "It's your health, and it doesn't ask about your affairs." The doctor was right, of course, but Cindy knew that until she could figure things out for herself, she wouldn't be able to rest easy. "Well, you shouldn't," said Sarah. "You're tearing up your soul, not to mention your heart." But Cindy shook her head stubbornly. Waking up at dawn, Cindy remembered that her son had a defense today and decided to call. Billy answered right away. "Hi, honey," she said with a tenderness that made her son's heart ache. "Hi, May. How are you feeling?" "Fighting, I hope." "You bet." "Well, good for you. Break a leg." "Go to hell," Billy said cheerfully, and mother and son laughed merrily. Almost like before, Cindy thought sadly, but almost. The defense of the diploma went brilliantly. The classmates celebrated the event in a cafe, and a grand banquet was planned for the evening in the dormitory. "Are you coming?" Stephen asked. "No, guys, I'll pass." Billy said no. "I'd love to, but, well, you know what I mean." "Yeah," Stephen nodded. "Home family. Hello to your wife." Back home, Billy was in for another round of hysterics. "I'm sitting here alone and you're having fun." Julian said it unhappily, not even asking how the defense had gone. But Julianne. Billy didn't know what to say. "Okay, forget it," she said, and then suddenly, with a painful wince, she clutched her stomach. "What's the matter?" Billy asked fearfully. "No, it's nothing, it's fine," Julian whispered, but it sounded unconvincing. "What about it, though?" "The doctor said it's a miscarriage." "What?" "Julian, this is not a joke. Should we call an ambulance?" "No, don't do that. The doctor says it happens from time to time." "So now we have to call an ambulance every time?" "I don't know," Billy shrugged. "I think it's better to be safe." "Billy, I know what's best for me," Julian said softly. "Well, okay, if that's the case." After his diploma, Billy wondered if he could find a job. He surfed the internet, went on interviews, but so far, alas, to no avail. Julian grumbled that her husband wasn't spending enough time with her, to which Billy remarked, "Julian, I apologize profusely, but what are we going to live on? On your barmaid's salary? What's wrong with my job?" Julian stood up. "Yes, I have no higher education, and I work as a simple barmaid, but you knew who you were marrying." "What's that got to do with it?" He was surprised. "But you have nothing to do with everything," shouted the wife so loudly that even choked. "And your mother also nothing to do." "She's definitely got nothing to do with it now," Billy said, trying to be calm. "That's it, honey. I'm out of here." Billy was already in the driveway when he got the call. It was a number he didn't recognize. "Hello, are you Billy Wesley?" the caller asked. "Well, let's say I am," he answered. "This is Anthony, a cardiologist from the 4th City Hospital. The thing is, your mother." Billy went cold. "What's wrong with my mom?" Listening to the doctor, the boy went cold, and he hadn't realized his mother had a heart problem. "What did you even know, asshole?" reprimanded Billy to himself. Unable to contain his emotions any longer, he sobbed like a child. When Billy entered the apartment, Julian was chirping merrily on the phone, looking out the window. Normally, he would have made himself known right away, lest, God forbid, he be suspected of eavesdropping. But this time it was as if something had made Billy stop and listen to what his wife was saying. "Lucy, it's all right," she said cheerfully to her friend. "Now I'm bringing him to the fact that I'm in danger of miscarriage, and of course, showy tantrums. By the way, the idea of dinner was brilliant. Thank you." "How?" "It's very simple. Billy will come home in a week, and I'll be lying in bed, all sick. He's gonna ask me what's wrong, and I'm gonna tell him I had a miscarriage. But this sucker won't understand anything anyway. Well, of course not. I neutralized my mother." Julian suddenly turned around sharply and seeing her husband said, "I'll call you back." "Bravo." Billy nodded and slowly, with formation, struck his hands 3 times. "And why, I wondered, were you a barmaid?" "Billy, you've got it all wrong." Julian justified herself pathetically. "Oh, don't give me that." He waved his hand. "Well, you weren't lying about my mother. She's in the hospital right now. You really neutralized her to perfection." "In the hospital?" Julian whispered. "I'm sorry." "Oh, really?" grinned Billy. Billy gathered his things and said at the door, "Well, darling, see you later. I'm filing for divorce this week, and good luck finding a new idiot." Cindy looked much better. She had an appetite and a healthy blush on her cheeks. Anthony entered the room with a pretty little basket of flowers and a bag of fruit. "Well, beautiful." He waved his hands cheerfully. "But I think you'll look even more beautiful now. If, of course, it is possible." "And what will happen?" the patient asked with a smile. "Now you will see." Anthony answered and turned to someone standing in the corridor. "Please, may I?" Shyly asked painfully familiar and so dear voice. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was such an idiot." "Billy," Cindy exclaimed and cried. "Come here, I'm gonna kick your ears off." "Kick your ears off," my son humbly replied. "I've earned it." "Son, meet Anthony," she said. "A very good man and, well, he is." "Mom, I understand everything," the son replied with a smile, looking meaningfully at the basket of flowers. "And something tells me that it is he who will help you forget all your troubles." "Mom, you know what I remember?" "What do you remember?" "Cindy, Anthony, and Billy coming out of the registry office." "I remembered how you graduated from the institute, and I just started studying," answered my son. So you're getting married and I'm getting divorced," Billy sighed. Cindy hugged her son and said, "You'll be happy yet." They got into the car and drove to the restaurant, where the closest parents of the newlyweds, Betty, some of Anthony's friends, and of course Ariana, Selena, and Sarah were waiting for them. Anthony held Cindy's hand, and she smiled serenely and thought, "And I, silly me, was afraid of change."